I'm Kyle Malnati, your host of the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast. At Calibrate, we exist to help people create generational wealth through real estate. My personal mission is to encourage, empower, and educate you by sharing best practices from business leaders that are proven winners. Broadcasting from the Mile High City, thank you for tuning in to episode 136 of the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Malnati. Thank you for your download, whether you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or if you're watching us out on YouTube. Our esteemed guest today is Michelle Ann. Michelle Ann is a master executive coach, happens to also be here in Denver. Michelle, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, and I'm excited to have a discussion with you about how the brain works, specifically how we, and I say we as our audience of real estate professionals, can really train our minds to be aware of different traps we might get into, especially, as I think about this in the summer sales season, and as we're recording this in the heart of the pandemic. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of things going on right now. Fortunately, real estate is going very well after we had some of our stay-at-home orders here in Colorado. And we've got a very fluid market where there's a lot of people moving up, down, sideways, et cetera. What I'm seeing, though, is there's also a lot of turmoil in the market specific to clients. I've had this year alone clients that are selling because they're getting divorced. I've had clients that are selling because of financial stressors. I've had clients selling because they're in a house that's been too small for them and now they're cooped up, and both husband and wife or partners have to be working from home and they're looking for their separate workspaces. So there's all these different things that people are reconsidering what their workspace is like, what their home life is like. And so let's just talk about your work in the subject of neurology and as a master executive coach, and how you coach professionals like myself to really condition their thinking in high stress situations.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I am what's called a master executive NeuroCoach. And so that means that I've studied neuroscience. I've studied neuroscience at Harvard, and I work that into the coaching. And what that means, it's an executive coach is somebody who helps you. They're a thought partner that helps you overcome your challenges, whether they're fears or stress. There's always something that's getting in our way because, we've always heard that we get in our own way, and that's what helps us, or, prohibits us from being more successful at whatever that is, a relationship or work, whatever we're doing. So what I do is I weave in the neuroscience, and I teach people the brain is very universal to everybody. So the brain is always going to react to stress the same way because the brain is wired for survival. And under this long-term stress that we're in, we can call this chronic stress, the brain has looked at COVID like it's almost like a predator coming at us. And so everybody's brain is going to be wired the same, meaning it's going to react to that stress. And when you have to go the distance, which is what I'm kind of calling it now, because we're well into August, it's been months since we've been into this situation. We have to go the distance, and we have to try to find ways that we can overcome those obstacles to have a more calm presence and relax under those stressors that come up so that we can act appropriately and actually excel in our career. It's very possible to do this. And what I do is I use neuroscience to explain how the brain works. And what that looks like for my clients is, instead of feeling blame or shame for how they reacted or behaved in a situation, it kind of takes that element out. And now everybody's brain reacts the same under stress. You might have different triggers based on your past stories, but I use that challenge. And my favorite thing, and what I really love to do, is I work with people. Their challenges are really doorways to their increased success and to creating more potential or more possibilities. Those are always looked at for me as a term of growth, like a place of growth for somebody. And if somebody's bringing me a challenge, that's what they do when they come to work with a coach. If they bring me a challenge, I'm going to work with that and help them think through it, asking them questions about different options and obstacles that they could use to try to overcome that. But I'm doing it from a neuroscience perspective so that we're literally rewiring the brain. So there's new tendencies in a few months and actually new traits. So you don't even ever have that behavior again. You don't even remember what you used to do. So some of those pet peeves are really gone.
Well, and I'm excited to learn more about this, as I've shared with a lot of our podcast guests and speakers that we talk to. I learn alongside our audience, and that's one of the most exciting things for me is to really have. I'll be the guinea pig here, Michelle, and ask you questions that relate to things in my story that are going to be, like you said, with our brains, universal to what a lot of high producing real estate agents go through. One of the things I like to share is this concept of the blender. And I feel like at times, and all of us go through this, whether you're in real estate or some other type of situation, you know, maybe something happened where all of a sudden you realize you're late, and that causes you to have some feelings of anxiety, some feelings of frustration. You're racing over to get to your next appointment. You know, that person is maybe a little bit perturbed that you're late to that appointment, and all of a sudden we start to realize that it happens, and you get a number of phone calls back to back to back. And real estate professionals, we're really in the business of managing other people's stress and creating problems or solutions to problems. We're not creating problems, we're creating the solution to the problem. And I think what can happen is we can get really worn down because we're constantly jumping from fire to fire to fire all day long, and maybe in a situation not giving ourselves the right type of rest and recovery, even just mini rest in between appointments. And so I would say that's one of the most common things as a real estate agent that I experience. Is just that concept of going from meeting to meeting to meeting, or having one phone call that I'll pick up, and then I'll see that there's someone else that I have to talk to, and they're real difficult to reach. And so I'm explaining to this next person I'm sorry, I got to take this other call. And then it starts, and all of a sudden you just feel like you're getting jerked around by your day. And so if we can start there, what are some things that I can do to prepare myself? Because it shouldn't be a surprise. That's going to happen, right? And then the second part of the question is not only just the preparation, but when I'm noticing that I'm starting to slide or drift into those feelings of frustration or anger or just fatigue from a day of kind of going through the battle and living through the blender, getting mixed up with all these different problems that you're trying to solve. What can we do to maybe restore ourselves? So item number one, preparation, and then item number two, kind of the recovery when just naturally the drift will happen.
Okay, and so there's a lot there. There's a lot there. So let's start to just slowly unpack that, and we can go back and forth. So the first thing is when we're inundated with challenges, and I'm going to bring in, so just like I'm a neurocoach, I'm going to bring in the neuroscience as I do this, which is different than some executive coaches. So when we're inundated with challenges, what the brain is doing is demand is over capacity, and that's a stressor. So that's one way we define stress in neuroscience, is when demand is over your capacity. Now the brain, for lack of a better word, is trying to freak out and go, I can't do this. So there's almost a fear involved. And I try to make it relatable to people. Okay, I don't need to come up with all the neuroscience terms. The brain is in a way freaking out. It's going, I can't do that, right? Now, really, it's a perceived, I want to make it clear that it's a perceived demand is over capacity. It's all a perceived thing, because if you look at in the past, I bet you there's plenty of examples when you have succeeded in doing all those things. So what we're in now is a trigger. There is a memory that when I get to this certain point, there's a trigger and my body's going, yeah, no, I can't do that. Okay. So the brain is telling you, no, I can't do that. But what we can always do, and that's a habit. It's almost like going to the fridge at 6 o'clock and getting a beer or a glass of wine. It's just a habit. So your brain can rewire all of those habits. And these are really good to do. Whether you're going through a divorce, as some people are going through a divorce, okay, understanding what that person is going through and bringing whatever that compassion is to that person is one of the things that we can do right there. But just to be present. So when you're in that situation, in that fear state, fear will immediately take over the brain. If you think about it, if you're afraid about something, you immediately lose control. You're in control, but you lose control of your mind. Like, what is it doing this? And you go into a negative thought pattern. So here's one thing. So to back up, 95% of our thoughts, there's been a study by the National Institute of Health in 2008, 95% of our thoughts are repetitious, okay, from day to day. So you have the same thoughts. So that means our habits are really well worn in our brain. Then the part of the brain that stores those thoughts is the hippocampus. So I feel like when we're doing a habit over and over and over, I call that hippocampus hammering. Like we're just hammering that in the hippocampus. Like this is how we want to do this. Now remember that every single thing that you think or say or do is rewiring the brain. So every single time you think one thought different, it's rewiring a new neural pathway. Now I'll tell you the really good thing about that is a lot of people out there want to lose weight or get in better shape. Well, when you rewire the brain and you do a new thought, it takes a lot of energy. In fact, the brain is the organ that takes up the most energy and fuel that our whole body uses, okay? It's 24/7 on. It's constantly thinking. Even when we're asleep, the brain is still on. It's not turned off. So we can rewire those habits very quickly and very easily. What we can do by doing that is when we start our day, so you're starting your day, we can actually set a tone or how we want to approach that day. Now, listen to how the brain is wired. The brain doesn't know what's happening. It does not know, it just knows what you tell it. It doesn't know the truth. It doesn't know what's true or false. So give this example. I'm watching a television show and there's somebody sleeping and a tarantula is crawling up this woman's arm. My brain is thinking that that is happening to me, okay? Or somebody's getting shot and I am like hitting my chest going, oh my gosh, it happened to me. And I'm really getting wrapped up in it, okay? My brain in that situation does not know that's not happening to me. I have to, and I have done this, can pull my brain back and go, this is just a television show. So right there, I am taking control of my brain and deliberately, which is the key word, saying, you know what? This is how I want to react to this. I don't want to get all worked up on this show. I have to go to sleep in 30 minutes. So I can pull myself back and gain a different perspective by deliberately choosing to do so. So when we're in that same fight or flight, when we're in that fear of there's so many things to do, we deliberately can pull back and choose what we want to do and do something differently. Now, when I said start in the morning, if you have an intention or visualize your day, this is a mindfulness technique, but it's very powerful, and it's proven that one of the most powerful ways to rewire your brain is to have a solid visualization. And when I mean that, I mean in high def, HD. So in the morning, you kind of know what your day is going to be like somewhat. Okay, you know your appointments, you know what's going to happen. And then there are going to be things that shift and change, last minute things. But when you can visualize your day, you're actually visualizing how you are going to show up. And when you choose how you show up, your brain is going to get behind that just by you honestly choosing, this is how I want to be. And at the end of the day, I want to let all that go. And I'm going to come home to my spouse and we're going to enjoy and we're going to have a celebration of I did it. Like I changed my habits here. Okay. It's very important to do that. So when you first start the day, visualizing your day, even when you wake up in bed, the brain starts to go. And it starts to go off on random thoughts that become very stressful very quickly, okay? There's done a lot of brain studies on when you wake up, that's when the stress starts, especially on a Sunday night or a Monday morning. Stress is very, very high. And when we start to visualize the day, visualize where we want to be at the end of the week, it really helps to lower that stress because it tells your brain that you're in control versus the world being in control. And when you're in control, you'll see how much your day starts to shift and change, and it really does become in your control. So it's a deliberate choice in that state to pull yourself back, get a different perspective, and start to control that. That's the first part of your question. Now, remind me the second part of the question.
So that was the preparation was the first part. And then, you know, we all plan and things still go awry. And so if you find yourself like I do with the best intentions, and there are certain days where I'm far more intentional and I've looked at my calendar and I've prepared adequately for each appointment, and I'm not running by the seat of my pants, flying by the seat of my pants. I have great intention as I step into the day, but someone's late to an appointment, causing me to be late to others. Someone doesn't do what they said that they were going to. Someone surprises me in a meeting by sharing something or getting off topic. Those types of things that naturally occur. What are some of the recovery things in the heat of the moment, in the battle that, okay, we've done the preparation and we've tried to visualize and really set forth an appropriate agenda that has our mind really planning for the day. But when things go awry, then what do we do?
Okay. Great question, because this happens to everybody, no matter what profession you are, across the board. And I'm expecting in my life for it to happen until the day that I die, right? So it's definitely something that if we have a skill that we can start to rewire that, it's going to make us more successful in every single thing we do, whether it's a relationship with our kids, our spouse, our work, our clients, everything. And so, and I have, so along with my study at Harvard in neuroscience and leadership, I've also studied for 9 years with a Swami in India. And I will tell you that I have integrated both of those things into every single thing that I do. So the study that I've done in mindfulness or this type of training is profound. And it's bar none what instrumentally changed me and how I work with people. So the very first thing to do when you want to rewire your brain, the very first thing. So think about, we're actually in a car and we want to go to Los Angeles. We're in Denver. We want to go to Los Angeles, but we're actually traveling east. We're going the wrong way. Okay. What do we have to do? So for instance, we're reacting in a situation and all this stuff is happening and it's not what we wanted to do. We want to go to Los Angeles, but for somehow we're going towards New York instead. The first thing that we need to do is start to slow down. When we slow down, everything starts to come back into a state of homeostasis in the brain, okay? The allostatic load just starts to come back into an equilibrium, okay? So what we want to do is when we start to get going too fast and we start to spin, like this is happening and it was not what we wanted to happen, it was not what we predicted. This is how we're going to get into a more of a growth mindset and being more adaptable. And the more adaptable people are proven to be highly successful. That makes a good leader or a good real estate agent into a great one, when you can be more adaptable and be more relaxed and calm, have a calm presence under pressure. That's the person that I'm going to trust. So if I'm a client of a realtor, I'm going to trust the realtor who has got this very calm and steady, stable presence. They can take care of me when my emotions are going awry, because they are going to go awry, because something with this house that I absolutely love is going to go wrong, right? And they're going to expect that. Potentially, sometimes buyers could expect that or not expect it. But when I'm with a real estate agent who can calm me in that situation, that's somebody I'm going to work with in the future and I'm going to recommend. That would be a very big difference in a real estate agent for me and for most people, most buyers. So slowing down is the very first thing. And I know that that sounds too simple. Most people do not know how to slow down. So I'm going to explain it. Okay. I'm going to go dive into this a little bit. What slowing down looks like. So if I'm talking to somebody and I really have my agenda on my mind, like I want to get this thing accomplished because I have this other meeting I want to go to. Okay. Slowing down to really hear what they're saying. And when I slow down, I'm going to tell you what happens in the brain. The person who is stressed, their brain is fragmented. So if you think of like a pie, like a pie chart, their brain is fragmented. Think of 100 different pieces. They're going here, they're going there, all these different places. The person who slows down, okay, their brain is going to start to become a whole. So one mission, one thing. And what happens is you're now connecting to your heart and your gut. There are neurons in your heart and your gut. When you slow down, you're starting to hear people. You're starting to listen to them. And so what happens, the brain will actually connect your mirror neurons to their mirror neurons, and emotions are contagious. So if they're kind of going and they're kind of taking the conversation somewhere you don't want to take it, for you to slow down creates a calm, influential presence that nobody really knows how to do. And this is really good in relationships when there's arguments as well. Okay, so it's great to use at home, okay? When you walk in the room and you could just feel somebody stressed, you haven't even seen their face, for you to start to take long, slow, deep breaths in and long, slow, deep breaths out, and just start to relax your shoulders and relax your belly. Now, I know it might sound silly, but it's the most profound thing that you can do, because your brain starts to become a whole. And now anything that is not whole is going to be attracted to a whole. So in a time of uncertainty like we're in now, people go to a leader who are stable, calm, and trusted. And this is what you're creating, that calm, trusted, stable presence. So if you can the more you train yourself to say, just relax my shoulders, relax my belly, and just wipe all expression from my face. There are three things, and I have a lot of different ways I work with people to do this. When we start to do that over and over, you can drop into that state in 1 second. That person, you can hear them, and now they start topping. They stop talking. I mean, they stop and they start to listen because your presence is so calm and so loving. So when you go into this accepting state of whatever is happening, all the chaos, and you just accept it, that's where your brain can start to get back together as a whole and come up with the solution and start to use the prefrontal cortex. Now, understand, when we're in a stress response, there's too much going on, like demand is overcapacity. Okay. What happens is we're in an emotional state in the brain. The prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of the brain, is actually shut down. The neural pathway is disconnected in a way. So you can't think, you can't plan, decision making is very poor. It affects your language, the word choice that you're choosing, and everything. But when you slow down, you resume access to the prefrontal cortex, and the limbic system, the emotional center, lets go, and it allows you to start to see through all these challenges with a different perspective. So slowing down is really the wisest thing you can do, because it gives you control of the prefrontal cortex. It actually leads to a higher level of reasoning and higher level of thought. When you slow down, you can hear not only their concern, but you start to hear, when the brain and the mirror neurons connect, like I said, you start to hear underneath their conversation, not what they're talking about, but their fear. And to fix what they're talking about is usually a Band-Aid. Usually there's a fear underneath. And if you can start to feel that fear, you can start to do, your body will just automatically react in the right way. So I understand, you can start to say that I understand, and now they're more calm, so you can get a solution together. But you gain a lot bigger perspective when you slow down and you have that, I call it a brain sync with your client, or a brain sync with whatever's happening, right? You get a different perspective, and you have access to the part of your brain that can think. Because when you're in that emotional state, people don't realize it. I mean, we have all been angry at one point, and when you're angry, you know that you can't even think. You know you don't have access. Somehow we know that by an experience. But even the smallest amount of stress, like somebody cutting you off on the way to work, can trigger a spike in the brain, which will take 4 hours for you to get back that prefrontal cortex. So starting to train yourself to slow down and take those 2 or 3 deep breaths, long, slow breaths in. And the key is to have a longer exhalation than inhalation. That exhalation it triggers this parasympathetic nervous system, and it triggers that relaxation response. And that's what we want. So a longer exhalation. And you do this all on the down low, by the way. Okay. You don't tell people you do this. In fact, my kids know that I do this, and they go, "Are you doing that breathing thing again?" Because my body will now, I've trained myself under stress to do this. And now they even do it. They even do it. So when they're under stress, I can physically see what's happening. And when I see them stressed, I bring myself down first. I listen. And then we get over that in a matter of seconds. But when you really listen to what the problem is, you can find a solution very quickly. Most people, when there's a problem, they're going through all of this dizzy about like all these things that could be the problem, but they're really not the problem. It's some kind of fear underlying.
Oh, aren't kids the best? You know, just they of course you've got this thing figured out, and they're making a little bit of fun at mom's expense, right?
They're always saying more neuroscience or what. But you know, I have to tell you a very funny thing. We were playing a card game, and I was watching all their tells, right? I was watching when they were stressed and all this stuff. And I said, "I so know you're stressed, and I'm going to press it." And then they were so mad because I kept winning every game.
Oh, that's
They
funny.
go, "Now teach me all the neuroscience so I can do it to my friends."
There you go. Yeah, it is incredible once you start to understand psychology and neuroscience. It is an advantage, and it is one that you can certainly use to help and make sure that, you know, the assumption is that, you know, you're going to take advantage of someone, but you can use it to really help people really do what they aspire to do and help them work through it. And so I think it's a fun discussion about, playing a card game or whatever. But in business, I think that this is a really important concept. So we're going to role play an actual situation that I talked to you about when we were preparing for this the other day on the phone. And I want you to hear the story I share and then tell me what some of those underlying triggers and fears, because Michelle, I have to share with you that it does sound like it makes sense to me. But one of the things that I can see as a potential objection is that I'm going to identify my client's fear. And most people, when you do that, they say, I'm not afraid. I'm not, that you're not hearing me the right way. And so how do we do this in a gracious way without like calling out their fear unless they're specifically saying, here's my issue. Okay.
Right. And so, and I understand where you went with that. So when your brain is actually connected to somebody, so emotions are contagious. So their fear you're going to feel their fear. You're going to always feel their fear or feel their emotions. Now, when you calm yourself, their brain's always going to gravitate toward the calm presence. It's just a natural thing. It's what we're wired to do. Okay. We're not wired to find somebody who is freaking out. We're wired to go to something that's calm and in harmony. And so we're just going to be there. So yeah, let's do this. So we're not actually calling them out on their fear. I want to clarify. We're sensing their fear. And what will happen automatically in the brain is there's going to be a compassionate response. Because when there's a brain sync between myself and you or two different people, that brain sync is that connection. So I'm listening to that person. I'll describe what I'm going to be doing in this role play. If I'm listening to you wholeheartedly, meaning I don't have an agenda that I need you to do X, Y, Z. Okay. If I'm listening to you wholeheartedly, no agenda, your brain is going to sync to mine and I can start to trust you. Okay. Or that vice versa. There's a trust that's happening and my brain is going to have the correct response just by trusting that. So I'm not calling them out. I'm showing them compassion by listening. And when I show them compassion by listening, there's an authenticity. And then I ask them, and I help people in different professions work with this and teach them how to do it so that they can get very good at it with their clients. Because as soon as you know how to calm a client down and have that presence, you're going to be able to do it for everybody. And it really ups your game because you have a lot less stress in your life. People come to me and say, I don't know what I have so much extra time in my day because I'm not putting out all these fires anymore.
Before we talk about this story, I just have a natural follow-up question, Michelle. How does fear show up? Because I think it's very rare that someone says I'm fearful, but what are some of the things, like I can think of anger is one of those. That's fear manifesting itself, and you see someone yelling or clenched fists or whatever. So what are some of the things that we can be looking for as real estate professionals, business people that would, manifest fear out in the open as you could see that or hear it?
And so as I'm saying fear, and that's a great question, a really good question. Thanks for listening and asking that. So fear is the underlying emotion. And we're going to see that probably a woman say that more than a male. The brains are going to be wired a little bit different. Fear is really a thought that you think, a thought in the future that you're afraid of that you don't want to happen. So really what you're going to see is you're going to see a stress signal. And there are 6 different stress signs. There's fight, okay? And a man's brain is more wired to fight. What that means and how that would play out is they're going to start, their tone of voice is going to go up and the volume is going to go up. So they want to be heard and you're starting to hear their passion. So the volume and the tone of your voice is going to change. So you're going to see that. Now the volume and tone of your voice is directly correlated with how passionate you are about something. Okay, so for a woman or a man, if I'm talking very loud, it's how passionate I am. So once you start to understand that, it puts a lot in perspective as you're listening. This person's getting louder than the other person. I can read that this is really important to them and this other person doesn't care about this so much. So let's use that information, to move forward. So fight is one, flight is another one. This is more common for women, is to just be quiet and don't say anything, kind of withdraw from a situation. It's not symptomatic of all women, but it's just women tend to do that one more than men. Some men will do that and that's their go-to. Now, there's fight, flight, tend, and befriend. Tend is something that you might not see so much in a conversation, but tend is, if you play that out, it's organizing your house or straightening your house or doing something. So notice that in COVID that we've had all this stress, a lot of our life has a lot of uncertainty. For me to be able to clean the house, it's something I can control, and it makes me feel good when I can control something in my life when so much is out of control. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay, so tending is one that you'll find maybe a woman doing more, but not necessarily. A man will do that as tinkering with an old car or trying to put like something else together, reorganizing something. So you'll see a man do it, but just in different ways, like a woman would clean a house or, okay. Befriend is to talk to a friend, reach out and talk to a friend. And why I want to talk about this just for a second. Talking to a friend is it's great as long as we're not doing this, I call the hippocampus hammering, like talking about the stressful situation. Talking to a friend will elicit an oxytocin, which is that trust, and it's a stress reducer. If you talk about something that is fun and not the problem, if we talk about the problem that we're talking about, it will increase and magnify the stressor in our brain. So one will stimulate a cortisol or a stress response, and one will stimulate the relaxation response. So we want to make sure we're deciding what we're talking about, and sometimes it's hard. Okay. And so those are your stress responses. So you'll see them act out differently, but fight, flight, tend, befriend, those are your four main ones that you're going to see.
All right, here we go. So real life situation, I'm going to do everything I can to not divulge or disclose identities or things that, really should stay appropriately within the transaction. But I think many real estate agents may have seen this play out in parts, but this has a lot of stuff going on all at once. So a few weeks ago, I closed a transaction. It happened to be on a Friday, and this transaction was one that was created because, and it was a single family residence where the family had made a decision that it makes sense to sell this home where they had raised most of their kids. And they said, this house is kind of getting a little bit too big. Maintenance is getting difficult. We're growing a little bit older. They both of the spouses had some loss in their life, loss of parents, and one of the spouses had actually grown up in this neighborhood, and so they just said, this is the time to really leave. But it was still one of those decisions that was a difficult one because they were really deciding to kind of right size, as we might say, or downsize. So there was that kind of emotion going on the seller side. On the buyer side, it was a growing family, first home purchase after moving here a few years ago and renting. This was their first home that they were buying. And they were really excited, but also I think very much nervous about the financial implications of buying a home. And so those things are playing themselves out. Also, throughout the transaction, a lot of negotiations on some deferred maintenance in this property, and that causes some relational tension and things of that sort. We get to closing, and everybody signs their documents, and we all leave, and we feel like, okay, closure. This worked out. It was a difficult ride as we went through it, but here we go. And the seller has the afternoon to move out of the house. Everyone has a different preference on how long they take to move out. Sometimes it's 2 weeks, sometimes it's 2 days. Sometimes in this case, it was, they were supposed to be moving out, leading all the way up to closing. And then the day of closing in the evening, they were going to have to deliver possession. So at some point throughout the transaction, the buyers asked if it would be okay if a few contractors would start doing work prior to closing. Now, in hindsight, we may have said no to this, but the issue was our closing date got delayed and the contractors were on a schedule, and these buyers didn't want to lose that schedule. And so what the sellers did is they acquiesced and they said, sure. So while they're preparing to move, there's contractors in there and everybody's kind of in the same space together. And there were a few disagreements because the people that are working on the home are not necessarily working for the people that own the home still. So lesson learned on my part. finally, on the day of closing, we leave closing, and I feel like, okay, we've navigated all this. Later that afternoon, I get a phone call from the seller because one of the contractors walked down into the finished basement and their feet became sopping wet because there was a leak going on in this property. And so I, of course, am now to tell the buyer of this new house of theirs that they have their first decision to make as it relates to a leak in the basement that had flooded out, and as you hear flood, you think, 6 feet of water. It was, just soaked carpet pad and things of that sort. But I'm now sitting here saying, okay, I thought we were done. And now this has become a much bigger issue. And I'm calling the buyer. The buyer is envisioning, a basement full of water and it's 6 feet tall. And, it's a swimming pool in my basement of this new house I bought. And did I buy a lemon, So I'm on the phone with the buyer and I said, we've got a plan. We're taking these steps. We've contacted the water department. We've shut off the water. We're going to go get a wet vacuum. We're going to get carpet blowers that you stick under there and it blows the carpet. All these different things, all these different solutions. And I remember the buyer saying to me, why are you so calm? Like, this is concern. I said, I think you need to come over and see that, it may not be as big of an issue as you might be thinking. And I've also experienced this, fortunately or unfortunately, multiple times. So, it's something I've had some experience with, and I've got a plan and I'm here for you. I'm not going to leave you at the altar, if you will. So that sets the scene. Super tense situation. And so what are some of the things that you're seeing in that scene play out, and what can someone do to really help everybody make sure that they feel like it's going to be resolved as best as it can be?
So you're asking about the actual end scene, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're intersecting, like, the problem hasn't been solved. I'm just speaking to the buyer, and then I'm sharing with the seller that I've had a communication with the buyer, but by no means is the problem solved yet.
Right.
We've got a tense situation on Friday. Property's closed. It's funded. Key transfer is happening in a few hours. Seller's trying to move out. Buyer's ready to go pick up their keys, and there's water in the basement.
Right. And so they're freaked out. So now all that whole situation.
Everyone's freaked out, by the way.
Yeah. Okay.
Including me.
Yeah. The whole situation is fueled by emotions. Yeah.
Yes.
So the very first thing to do is so what I would suggest to do is, prior to the phone call, before we're talking to anybody, is to calm yourself as much as possible, because whatever you're doing, because you're the one who's probably the leader, or the executor of everything. You're the one who is the negotiator, who needs the really good skills right now to kind of come in as a very calm, steady, trusted voice. Okay. So realize that people are going to be trusting your decision here. You were the person who put these two people together, and you're the lead, almost like you're the father of two kids. How are you going? These are two kids. They're both emotional. One has one's toy, one broke it, type of thing like that. It's almost like that. Okay. The seller is sad. They didn't want to get out. There's an emptiness going on. And now they could be blamed for something. The buyer's excited, but they're disappointed. And they're like, oh no, maybe we made a wrong decision. And it's all fueled by emotion. Every single thing is fueled by emotion. So now remember right here, the prefrontal cortex is just dead. There's nothing going on there. There's no connectivity. If you did a brain scan, there'd be no light. Okay, there. Okay, the limbic system of emotions is going off. So there's nothing being planned out. And so we need to get them to calm. So in order to get them to calm, we need to model it. So we absolutely need to model what we want them to do. So I need to calm and actually almost envision how I want this to go. So I know it's almost like looking at it like two kids. If I'm a father, if you're a father, you have two kids. If you're a mother, you have two kids. And there's a situation going on with the kids. Now you know how to do that without even going into it. But now these are adults, and we expect them to know how to do this, but they don't, because there's no prefrontal cortex. There's no even awareness that they're not in their prefrontal cortex. You with me? Okay. And so there's no awareness. Now, stress, you want to make sure you understand, is very unconscious. I taught at the Bureau of Prisons, and at the end of the class, I said, so how was your day? They go, it was great because nobody shot at me and I didn't have to shoot anybody. And I go, wow, you guys have a stressful job. They go, our job isn't stressful. I go, that is a sure sign that stress is unconscious. If this is what you're living every day, it's surprising that when we're under high stress, we tend to say, we got it. And we don't admit, especially in a time like today, where there's so much stress and people's stress, their fuse for stress goes off immediately. There's no resilience there, especially when you're talking about a home buying, because it's now my home and it's going to be so close to me. And when somebody's giving up a home, okay, that was their lifetime thing with all those memories. They don't have closure on that. So they are two little kids in a way, consciously, because they're in that emotional state. So for you to bring it down, the realtor, for whoever the realtor is, or yourself, to bring it down into a state of very calm and actually visualizing each person. Now you're going to be surprised how when you visualize the seller and the buyer and what they're doing, and you project that onto them, they're going to feel that that's how they should behave. They're going to feel a dominance and an influence. And this is what a really good, great leader will do, is they'll have this calm presence. Before the phone call, they make sure they bring it down and they, whatever they need to do. And that's what I work with people on, and how to get your recipe to get that down very quickly and train yourself to get that really calm. And then you want to come up with some kind of plan, and you actually see these players in the plan working together to solve this together because they want to be together. So you're looking at it as a system instead of three individuals that are fighting. You want to kind of make it into a system, and the brain can see the system and it will project that just in energy, and people will start to do that. So I use the same thing in a meeting. When people are in meetings that there's a conflict, conflict is just a doorway, remember, for growth. So this person can leave this house and give it to them in good hands. This person can say that's really great that they did that. It could be a really beautiful experience. And having them come to how they can make this a beautiful experience, this closing or this opening this door to be a really beautiful experience. When they know that they can participate in something like that, they'll do it. And you need to almost project that onto, this is how it's going to go. And when you choose that wholeheartedly, it usually goes that way. There could be little things, but whatever you choose, your brain is going to create that, and it's going to make that happen. And we know this. We know this to be true because if you look at any peak experience that you have had, a peak experience where you are high performing, what did you do there? What strength did you use? And typically across the board, somebody really believed in their vision, which is what I'm talking about. You're believing in this vision that you had, and you made sure that that followed suit. And you were steady because you trusted it. And so it's really just using whatever you would do in that peak, whenever you were in a peak position, like of high performance, you're using those strengths. Your brain knows that you can do that because you've already done it in the past. And your brain will know, wow, I'm going to apply that strength, and it's just going to go like this. And it will go like that. So what you tell your brain, it will do. Like in the beginning of the phone of this interview, we talked about waking up and setting the tone for your day. And so as you set the tone for your day, it's the same thing. You're going to set the tone for the conversation. So the first thing is slow down and make sure that you're in the prefrontal cortex and not in the emotional state, and being as whole as you can and trusted, and imagining how you want to show up and embodying that. When you embody that, it's a full body experience. It's a full, like, I am going to be trusted. I'm going to be approachable, and we're going to solve this problem. And everybody is going to work in a system, and they're not going to fight with each other. Like visualizing that and seeing how you're going to get to do that. So you have two kids in a way who are, one feels loss and one feels excitement, or now how do I get the one to feel this way? And you know how our brain will just figure that out because we have felt lost, but what makes you feel better? So visualizing yourself in that situation will help you overcome all that. But visualizing and believing in your story makes it happen. Okay. Yeah. And you have to 100% believe in it, because if you have doubt, the doubt is what your brain is going to focus on. You remember 80% of our thoughts are negative. You have to pick the one and believe it in your gut. It has to believe in your gut. And I train people to do that. Once you do that, your success will just blossom, because you'll be able to do that not just in this situation, but you'll believe it in selling the house and whatever it is. You become very trusted when you can apply that to all different situations. That's how you become even a higher achiever, taking it to the next level. You really believe in why that works. The really fun part about it, and even why my business is so successful, is because I believe in my mission. I believe in why I'm doing it. There's a purpose behind it. And when you tie your purpose of like why you're even in that situation selling houses, right? Why you're doing it, when you tie that to it, the possibilities start to become unlimited of what your brain can do. You start to blow out the fear. There's no more fear. When you tie it to your purpose of the reason you're doing it, right? You bring that to it, and it creates a complete new possibility.
That's wonderful advice. When we deal with difficult situations, really tough conversations, last minute challenges, high stress, burnout, we're really in a situation where we need to read people and then respond appropriately. And I think that's great advice. Before we go into our last two questions that we ask all guests before we end our podcast, you've got some free resources, and then you've got some paid resources on how you help people. So you've got this master's course, coaching and training, lunch and learn series, executive coaching, neuro leadership. Michelle, what are some of the ways that people can kind of start to research you and understand what your methods are like? And then if they're interested in a formal coaching arrangement, how do they reach out to you, and what are some of those resources?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for asking that. So I do monthly classes, and Microsoft is sponsoring the next few classes. So these are open worldwide to these classes. And I have a free lunch and learn series. There's one every month. And the next one is on the neuroscience of uncertainty. And then the one in September is on cognitive bias, rethinking cognitive bias and how to shift your belief systems, and all from a neuroscience perspective. So those are free and open to the public, and you can go to my website and sign up for those. If you go to themasterscourse.com/Microsoft, those are free and you can share those with anybody. I have a neuro leadership course coming up, which is a 6-week class, and it's 2 hours a week. And I think its price point is $20 an hour for this class. So it's very affordable. And what we're doing is we're working with anybody, whether it's a real estate agent, if you're an emerging leader. I even work with a lot of people, stay-at-home moms, who are taking these classes, and they're learning how to use science to be a better person and to be a better leader and to be more successful. So those classes are very interactive, and I show you all of the tools from neuroscience and blend it with mindfulness and how to be more successful and take it to the next level, no matter what you're doing. And then lastly, I am, like we had discussed, I'm a master executive coach, and I use neuroscience in there. And what that looks like is I work with people on a 6-month engagement, and I work with you to overcome challenges, whatever they are, and to create what I do with all my clients is create new possibilities. So there has to be a trusting relationship. So you want to establish yourself with that, like doing some of my free classes and things like that. And you can reach out to me if you're interested in something like that via email. And my email is michelle@system2.com. So it's SYSTEM, the number 2.com.
And check out themasterscourse.com. Of course, you can do the /Microsoft or just tour the website, themasterscourse.com. Okay, last two questions, Michelle. And they're questions we ask all of our expert guests. First question is this concept of Dear Younger Me. It comes from a song by the man Mercy Me. And I really have dubbed this question as the advice you wish you knew when you were 22. It's the whole song goes through as the writer of the song is singing and sharing all the different things that have occurred in their life. And, if they could write a letter to the earlier version, and there's a couple of songs like that, what's the advice that you would give to yourself in your 20s?
That's pretty easy at this point. I would give, all of the stress that I have endured and everything that I have tried to control and make go a certain way, that has just created more stress in my life and more conflict. When I learned, when I studied in India, and I learned to just allow things to be, like everything is okay, and allow things to be, it allowed me to be a different kind of person and show up differently for my family, in my business. for everybody. So for me to just allow what is happening and to use that situation and figure out what I want to do from there. When I react to stress a lot less or not at all, things tend to work themselves out very effortlessly. And when I was younger, I thought that I had to have a plan to make all this money and to do all this and be a high performer. But it just seems that the right opportunities present themselves. And when I'm stressed, I'm not seeing those. I'm not seeing any of those opportunities. I'm not seeing what's right in front of me. And when I stop stressing about things and where it's going, it allows the opportunities in front of me to just blossom. And it's so heartfelt that my career has taken off. I've had 3 successful businesses, and my career has taken off by actually almost being the non-doer. I'm working at my business, but I'm not stressing about it. And I'm just allowing things to happen, and opportunities just seem to come to me when I do that. It's the most beautiful way to live life. And I never knew there was another way to live life. And there is another way. So
I sort of look at that. I love that answer. And I sort of hear that in someone that's wanting to go a certain direction, and they're literally swimming upstream, swimming against the current, versus saying, here's where the current is taking me. And while I might want to go that direction, this is where everything's flowing. So, it's far easier, of course, to go with that current, but then also it's just, it may take you to different opportunities that you weren't even expecting because you thought you wanted to do that. And here you go. So great answer. I love that. That's the first time I've had that answer, and I think it's wonderful. Okay, so the follow-up question, our last question that we've developed here, is a tribute or an homage to one of my past career coaches. He tragically passed away last year. His name's Chris Oakley, and he was actually on episode 5, the first 5 episodes of our podcast. And when he answered that exact question, he shared with me that he was in his 20s in a mentoring group with several men, and one of the activities or exercises where they took the group of people and said, you need to read this book by an author named Andy Stanley. It's called The Principle of the Path. And in that book, there's an exercise where they're required to write their own obituary. So Chris did that and then lived that out for the next 10 years. And thankfully, and this is very strange to listen to it post-mortem after he passed away, but thankfully that vision drove him for the next 10 years, and he was really living life on purpose. And you shared that with me as we were preparing for this. Purpose is something that's really important to tap into. And so this question's a legacy question. What would you like for people to say about you, either at your funeral or in an obituary, and how would you like to be remembered?
That's easy. I would like to be looked at, and I will explain this answer. I would like to be looked at as 2 words: endless love. And when I worked with a Swami in India, I turned around before I left, and I felt that there was endless love there. And when you give somebody endless love or acceptance, that's where all possibility lies. There's something that shifts in their brain and their body. And so when I work with people as a coach, when I give them acceptance and love, and I know that sounds like a little bit not professional to say, but when I give them that, it opens up the opportunity for them to reach to this unlimited place. And not many people have experienced this endless love that I've experienced from this person that I work with in India. And I want to tell you, all the neuroscientists that I have worked with at Harvard, they study the Swamis as the ultimate goal of contentment and success in life. And so it's funny that we're studying all these different things, and that's the ultimate goal. When I was there, I could feel it, and it changed me. And if I could be known for endless love, it meant that every life that I would touch, I have transformed, because love is so transforming. And to come back at with you with another song, is the Beatles did have it right. It is all about love. Love is all you need. And when you come with love to any situation, you're connecting to your purpose inside, because everybody's really ultimately about that. And when you come from that, the opportunities abound. There can be no other place. But if we come from greed, there is always a fear and a stress and a conflict. But when I come from an endless love, and I do this with every person that I coach and work with, people tell me that they know I'm authentic. They know I'm going to be there for them, and they just don't understand how profound these changes can be and how fast they happen. And it's because I'm putting that space out there. So I would love to be known as Endless Love.
Oh, it's incredible, Michelle. And as I hear that,
It's powerful.
it is. And as I can think of the people that I feel endless love from, because I can think of a few people in my mind, I inherently feel safe with those people. And so I can just tell that is such a core tenet. And this content, I mean, we could do this for another hour. And at the same time, I know that you're very good at helping people exactly where they are and where they want to go. And so again, let's share your website, Michelle Ann. You're a master executive coach, and the website is themasterscourse.com. And again, you can send Michelle a direct email if you're wanting to do that. And again, it's Shell, SHELL at system2.com. Michelle Ann, thank you so much for joining us today on episode 136 of our Calibrate Real Estate podcast. As I love to say, for our podcast producer who arranged this, for Holly Vogel who connected us, Michelle Ann, thank you so much, and we will see you around the neighborhood.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
everybody.
much. It's a pleasure. Yeah, thank you so much.